Wow!
So one of the first things you learn as a YouTuber is the opening to a video is perhaps the most important part of the video, because within the first 10 seconds of a YouTube video you can lose up to 20% of your viewers. So there's a real need to get that right. And after I finished the first draft for the opening to Natsuki the movie back in January, I knew I had failed. It was absolutely dreadful. Originally the film opened with the clip of Natsuki and Pete talking, then the opening title sequence, and then there was a kind of a sequence where I had a voiceover and some shots of Tokyo. And after I played it to a few friends, the consensus was that it was awful, and I think I knew it was awful as well. But here it is. Check it out and see for yourself. Since the 1980s, Japan has consistently been ranked as one of the most economically prosperous countries in the world, with a population today of 127 million. However, a rapidly declining birth rate threatens the prosperity of younger generations, with the population forecast to decline by 40 million people in the next 50 years. Nowhere captures the anxiety surrounding this demographic time bomb better than the countryside. In Yamagata Prefecture in the north, the population has decreased by 100,000 people since the year 2000 alone, and as rural towns across the region continue to shrink, the prospect of less and less customers has led to a growing anxiety amongst small to medium business owners. It wasn't saying anything about Natsuki the movie or Natsuki at all. It was just a boring generic opening, and I think I did that because I wanted to make people think, wow, it's like a real movie. The voiceover was very bland, it wasn't very exciting, it was quite ominous as well. For a 50-minute documentary that was supposed to be a fun kind of adventure, it was just a bit depressing. I'm really happy with how the opening turned out in the final version, with Natsuki's story, then a kind of scene from the film, then a title sequence, and then it just kind of jumped into the story nice and quick. So make your opening really compelling, make it so people actually want to carry on watching, and don't be using lazy, unoriginal sequences, particularly of Shibuya Crossing in Japan. It's been done a million times before and it's just so boring and lazy. Unless you're making a documentary about pedestrian crossings, in which case go crazy, it's perfect. So this is the camera we used to film most of Natsuki the movie, the Canon 70D. It's the camera I've been using the most for the last 2 years. And it's also the biggest regret I have when looking back at the film. The quality of the footage, it just isn't good enough for a lot of it. I actually upgraded to the Panasonic GH5, which I'm filming this on, halfway through filming. And you can see there's a difference in quality from the stuff at the start and the stuff at the end. The 70D isn't particularly sharp, the image is a bit blurry, it's not very dynamic. But worst of all, when I was filming with this camera quite a lot, I was doing it handheld, and there's no stabilisation in the lens, which meant that a lot of the shots are a bit shaky and don't look that good. And it also meant I had to stabilise digitally up to, I think, 20% of all the shots I used in the film. Probably doubled the editing time overall having to do that. So yeah, I regret not getting a better camera through filming. So the next time I undertake a serious project, I'm going to make sure if there's a piece of equipment I need, I'm going to get it, because I don't want to have to live with the regret that I have after Natsuki the movie and the quality of this camera. There wasn't a point during making the documentary that I ever wanted to give up, but I did come close in between February and April of this year, when I was getting all the footage together and trying to make the story and the scenes. I really started to struggle to comprehend the scale of it all. I had the scenes, the story, I had it all jumbled up in my head, and I was really struggling with it. And I did the simplest thing to overcome it, and I regret not doing it months earlier. I don't know why I didn't. I got 3 pieces of A3 paper, and I got every scene in the film, of which there was, I think, there must have been like 30 scenes or something. And I put it on a post-it note. I just wrote the scene out on a post-it note and stuck it all in order. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And for the first time ever, throughout the whole year of production, I was able to visualise the film and understand it. But it wasn't just visualising the entire film on the wall. It gave me a real sense of motivation, because every time I finished editing a scene, which typically took between 1 to 2 days to finish, once I'd edited it, colour graded it, narrated it and subtitled it, I would kind of just tick it off with a red pen and I would know that it was done. Doing that every day, ticking off a scene that I'd finished, that gave me the motivation I needed to keep pushing forward right to the very end. So if you're ever undertaking a huge project, visualise it as best you can and congratulate yourself every time you complete a small piece of it, a small section of it, and that'll give you the motivation you need to keep pushing forward until it's finished. And when they're all ticked off at the end, you will feel amazing. And then I put them in the bin, and now they're gone. One of the things that takes up a lot of my time is finding the right music. I never feel entirely satisfied until I feel I've got the perfect song. And for this, for Natsuki the movie, I went through 4 websites getting the music I needed. I dread to think how much time I spent, probably hundreds of hours over the period of a year, trying to pick out the exact song I wanted, whether that was a song contrasting the beauty and majesty of a place, only to have it ruined by Natsuki's ridiculous singing.
Flintstone, the Flintstone, oh.
Or music to capture a sense of regret.
暮らしたい海外で
One of my favourite songs was the song for Karl Marx, which kind of highlighted just how dramatic and ridiculous it all was, that Natsuki was coming face to face with the grave of Karl Marx.
なんこれ What this? マークス
Karl Marx?
カール・マークスうわーすっげえ Amazing.
But actually, out of the dozen or so songs we used in the film, my favourite by far is actually just Natsuki playing the guitar. I still don't know what song he was playing in that moment, but it felt really nice and organic when he's standing there playing the song, telling us about his story.
14歳くらいに初めてパンクロック
That was completely unscripted and unplanned. Natsuki did just pull the guitar off the wall and start playing. And then a few minutes later, he started telling me about his previous obsession with punk rock music and his relation with music. And I look back at both those scenes and realised that they went together, they combined really well. And when it was edited and done, I was really, really happy with that moment. That's one of my favourite scenes in the film. So don't stop searching until you find the exact song, the exact soundtrack you need for your video, because it feels really great when you slot it in there, listen back and watch it. You'll know when it's the right song intuitively. So Natsuki was in the UK for about 5 days, if that. We had a very narrow window in which to film. And the busiest day of all was the Friday. When we got up early, we did the indoor skydive. We then went to Stonehenge to film Natsuki walking around there. And then we were going to go to Brighton and film Natsuki walking around Brighton, eating fish and chips, hopefully talking to the locals. And we had this idea of Natsuki going to Brighton and doing some magic tricks. We printed out these big banners of Natsuki's magic show. And he was going to stand somewhere in Brighton High Street or down on the seafront and just perform some ridiculous magic tricks. And we were all really looking forward to that. And then, of course, he did the backwards somersault, he nearly broke his neck, and all the filming in Brighton went out the window. We spent, I think, about 5 hours sitting in the accident and emergency room in Brighton Hospital. And on the Saturday, we were all a bit depressed that Friday had been such a disaster. And then Natsuki decided he wanted to go and get acupuncture because he thought it would help his back. But then it dawned on us, that would be a bloody fun and random sequence to put in the film. Natsuki getting acupuncture and the flaming cups on his back and the needles, it'd all be quite a visual thing. So we decided to go and film it. And the scene came together really well. And actually, looking back at it all, we were quite lucky in some respects that he did bang his head, because not only is that one of the comedic highlights of the film, lots of people loved that and commented on it, but we also had the nice scene with Natsuki and Mr. Terry, and the acupuncture. So I think in many ways that kind of worked out better than it would have done originally had we filmed Natsuki's awkward magic show in the street. We kind of took advantage of that bad, terrible situation and spun it around to make it work and make it into a scene in the film. Always be on the lookout for an advantage. Out of a bad situation, there's always an upside, there's always something you can get from it. If you're making a fly-on-the-wall style documentary, you have to keep the camera rolling the whole time, because you know the moment you stop, that's when something amazing is going to happen and you're going to regret not having the camera rolling. One example was after Natsuki met Jeff, his fan in London, he'd had this whole day where he hadn't met a single fan, nobody had spotted him, nobody had recognised him up until we saw Jeff. And then Natsuki and Jeff actually went on walking around London. They carried on to a place called Camden, which is a very trendy district, lots of young people there. And while he was there, I didn't have the cameras rolling, but he was spotted by at least 5 or 6 different viewers. And I was really angry at myself afterwards, because that would have been perfect to film all these people talking with Natsuki, interacting with Natsuki. So I regret that a lot. But luckily, after that, I did learn my lesson, because when we went to the Louvre to film the Mona Lisa and Natsuki seeing the Mona Lisa, after he walked away from the Mona Lisa, I decided to carry on rolling and to follow him over to the other painting, which he'd walked over to, depicting the miracle where Jesus turns water into wine. And it was there that we got some really amusing comments, and also it made that whole scene in the Louvre feel a lot more interesting, because the shots that we'd got of Natsuki with the Mona Lisa, they weren't really that good. It was a very short moment. So luckily we were able to pad that out with some funny moments like Jesus is Christ's dog. So we kept the camera rolling, and we were rewarded for it. So always keep the camera rolling, because you never know what you're going to miss.
Jesus Christ's dog. Maybe 2 dogs.
Nearly every scene in Natsuki the movie is about 2 minutes long. If you go back and watch it, whether it's him talking about his breakfast, or looking at the Mona Lisa, or eating fish and chips, they're each 2 minutes long. And yet, each of those scenes was cut down from about 1 hour of footage. You have to keep cutting away until you're left with the building blocks of the story, of the narrative that you want. For example, the last moments of the film, when Natsuki comes back from the trip and he's writing the song, we filmed him for 50 minutes talking about not only his trip, but also what he wanted to do in the future. And I ended up cutting it away, but there was a big segment where Natsuki started talking about his next trip, going to New York, going to the grave of Sid Vicious or whatever. He talks about that extensively, but I realised I didn't want the emphasis at the end of the film to be on the next trip. I wanted Natsuki and the viewers to look back and to, reflect on the journey that he'd just been on, rather than look forwards. So that's one example where we cut it right down. There were some scenes that we completely cut out. There was a bit on the carousel where Natsuki was on a carousel going round and round by the River Thames. There was a scene just after Natsuki had put the flowers on the grave of Karl Marx, and he was feeling a sense of regret at not meeting Sid Vicious. Originally he caught the train and went to the River Thames and threw the flowers in the river. And there was this weird funny moment where he gives the flowers to this dog on the train. Here's the scene, I'll let you watch it quickly.
Thank you, Sid. Have a good trip, man.
The reason I took that out is I felt it slowed down the pacing of the film. I felt like He'd gone to the cemetery, he'd failed, and we needed to move on to the next thing. And that scene felt unnecessarily drawn out. It felt a bit funnier, it felt a bit better to emphasise his failure by just having that long shot of him sitting at the station on his own. I felt that was more powerful than him being on a train, giving flowers to a dog. So do film as much as you can, film everything, but don't be shy about cutting out scenes or sequences and moments until you have the exact story, the building blocks of the story that you want to tell. Undeniably, my favourite thing about making this documentary was I just learned so much stuff along the way about cinematography, about telling the story, and I learned that you have to, if you have an idea or something you want, you have to just go for it. You have to try and learn whatever it is you need to do to get that scene done. But admittedly, the two biggest challenges were the opening title sequence and the music video at the end of the film. With the opening title sequence, I made that about 4 or 5 times. I watched through a few films and documentaries to see how they do it. I wanted to have an opening title sequence because I thought it would help build up some sort of anticipation, and it gave a nice kind of upcoming, here's what's going to happen in the film. There's going to be lots of travel, there's going to be lots of random weird shit. So I knew I wanted an opening title sequence. Originally it was a bit bland and simple, and it wasn't until the smoke came in, the cigarette smoke lingering across the credits and across the scenes, that it all kind of came together and felt perfect. And the song, it just felt like it had the right balance of epicness and comedy as well. I was really happy with that. The music video at the end was an epic challenge, not just because we didn't have much time and I didn't know how to film it, but just Natsuki fucked it up so many times that one evening. We had 2 hours to film in this studio. Natsuki turned up 1 hour late in the first place because he had overrun at work, so me and his bandmates were just standing around not knowing what to do. Natsuki turned up late and he had the lyrics, the song lyrics, written in English with him, and as he opened his car door to get out and come inside, the lyrics just blew away in the wind because it was a very windy, snowy evening, and all the lyrics went, and Natsuki was so angry. And then he walked in and he opened his guitar case and it was the wrong fucking guitar, the wrong guitar, and he had to send the drummer, who was a really nice guy, the drummer had to go all the way back to Natsuki's workplace and grab the guitar and come back. And after Natsuki had warmed up and practiced for another 40 minutes, we only had 20 minutes to shoot that music video. And it's a miracle that it worked at all, to be honest. So we filmed it 4 times, and I used the GH5 camera here, and I just used it handheld. I took it at 4 different angles, and luckily it all looked quite dynamic. The guy that owned the place, he started playing around with the lights behind Natsuki and his band, and that really brought the whole thing alive. Without those lights, it would have been quite a bland, boring video, but it really gave it a sense of atmosphere. Worse still, because Natsuki had lost his lyric sheet to the wind, he had to kind of do the song from memory, but he'd forgotten half of it. And each of the 4 takes, he messed up a certain part of the song. But afterwards, when I was editing it, I did it in such a way that it looked like he was singing it and he knew all the lyrics the whole way through. I colour graded it, I put subtitles on it, and when it was all said and done, it actually came together pretty well, and I was really happy with it. It ended the whole movie on a high note. Originally, there was no music video, it wasn't planned. Natsuki only decided to write a song when we'd come back from filming, when I was already kind of wrapping up production. Originally it was just going to end with Natsuki looking at the Eiffel Tower and going, oh wow, the Eiffel Tower, the end. And it was a really crap ending. So when the music video was finished and edited and put in there, I was so happy with it. So if you have an idea, if you have this vision or something you want to do, but you don't really know how, learn how to do it and then make it happen, because when you sit back and you watch something that you've just learned how to do and produce, it feels amazing. And I was so happy that we were able to turn this idea of making a music video into reality and to actually end the entire film on a pretty good high note, in my opinion.